Hey everybody, let's do a quick recap of where we've come so far. You were born with a primitive operating system. That primitive operating system is designed to keep you safe. And in that primitive operating system, one of the initial functions of that is it begins to sort experiences into two broad categories: comfortable and familiar, which it equates with being safe; uncomfortable, unfamiliar, which it equates with potentially unsafe. Now, as we go through life, and we have, as an infant, we start to gain more experiences, direct experiences, through our senses. So our embodied mind is bringing information about the outside world through our senses. The brain is sorting into those broad categories. Then, as we develop further, language begins to come on board. Language begins to drive most of our learning. There's a huge upside to that. Language allows us to learn things about which we've had no direct experience. So the brain can start to understand the world around us, even though we don't have direct experience with it. And we can start to have more of these programs operating about predicting in the future, and which is helpful in terms of developing parts of our brain and helpful in terms of developing more complex problem-solving abilities. However, there's a downside to that, in which now the brain is preoccupied with conversations it's having with itself that it has no direct experience with. However, it's reacting as if it is a direct experience. So let me see if I can give you an example of this. We start to have thoughts about speaking in front of our class, and the thoughts about speaking in front of the class begin to bring up emotional reactions or physical feelings as if we were actually speaking in front of the class. And the brain begins to respond as if that is happening in real life. And it begins to move those thoughts into that unfamiliar, uncomfortable, unsafe category, even though you don't have any direct experience about that. And so the brain now can create things and scenarios in which it's starting to have a strong negative bias that anything uncomfortable and unfamiliar is therefore unsafe. Herein lies the problem. As long as you continue to operate with that very primitive operating system, all the things that make life worth living, all the things that make life exciting are going to first show up in that uncomfortable, unfamiliar category. And due to the strong negative bias of the primitive operating system, you will start to try to avoid anything unfamiliar or uncomfortable, and then your life will become frozen or start to shrink down. You won't take risks dating or traveling or doing or learning anything new because of that strong negative bias. Much love.